Are you curious how much homes cost on half an acre, 5 acres, or even 20 plus acres right here in the Lexington, Columbia, and Lake Murray area part of South Carolina? That's right. In the past, I've done new construction neighborhoods with larger lots. As well, I've made videos about established neighborhoods with more land. And I've made videos about buying land and custom building a home. But time and time again, I get asked, what about homes on land outside of the HOA? How much home and land can I really get in the Midlands of South Carolina, Lexington, Columbia, and Lake Murray? And so I'm going to be breaking down the average cost of homes on a range of sizes and acreages. And we're going to be doing this throughout the entire Lexington, Columbia, and Lake Murray area. I'm going to be breaking it down by the specific area, simply because a house on an acre in town may cost over $1 million, where a house on 5 acres in some of the more rural areas may cost only $300,000. And I know some of you are looking for that more rural lifestyle where others want to be closer to the amenities and shopping. So hopefully this gives you a good range of ideas. And we are getting kicked off in the more rural areas. Again, later on, I will be diving into the Lexington area, Irmo, Northeast Columbia, and Blythewood, and around Lake Murray, so stick around for that. But wanted to give you some basic ideas about the area before we dive into this. So we're getting kicked off in the western side of Lexington, as you see. Primarily going to be that Batesburg, Leesville area we're talking about. Batesburg, Leesville, very small town. They do have a Walmart out there. They have Sheely's Barbecue, really good barbecue place out there. A couple local shops and things like that, but not a very big area. And to give you an idea, you're about 30 minutes to downtown Lexington from downtown Batesburg, and you're about 40 minutes to Columbia. But let's dive into those homes on land in this area. And while I'm giving you some of the basics of these areas, for those first getting familiar with the area, at the end I'll link you to some videos I made that actually break down all these areas further, so you can learn the pros, cons, nearby amenities, and so much more. So stick around to the end for that. And I'll be showing you some active homes on my website as I talk about pricing. But when I share the data, this is going to be closed homes over the past year, but at least you can get an idea of some active homes at the time of making this. As we break these down, I'm going to be talking about single family homes. We're not going to be talking about mobile or manufactured homes in this, and I tried to omit any that were non-livable, but I kept any fixer-uppers that might have been still sold as is. So we get started off with half acre to 1 acre. Homes sold between 744 square feet and 3,420 square feet. They sold from $63,000 up to $525,000. The average came in at $206,000, and it brought it to an average price per square foot of $147. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes sold between 980 square feet and 3,045 square feet. Homes selling from $130,000 up to $640,000. The average came in at $340,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $169. The 5 acre and up category, which in this ended at 28.7 acres, homes from 1,069 square feet up to 3,800 square feet, selling from $258,000 up to $650,000. The average came in at $393,000, and that brought an average price per square foot of $205. I know these videos can seem like a lot of information at once. A lot of you have told me that, but my goal is to hopefully help you understand the average price of the top categories of homes I have buyers asking for. That way you can make sure your expectations meet reality. Continuing on in Lexington, we're rolling into the rural south part of Lexington. So this is going to be areas like Gaston, Pillion, and Swansea. Again, very small towns. Pillion, Swansea still have a lot of farmland out there. Those downtowns don't have really too much. As you get closer to Gaston, kind of pushing towards West Columbia, you get a little bit more shopping, food, things like that out there. But again, to give you an idea, from the further south part of Lexington, you're about 30 minutes to downtown Lexington, and you're about 35 minutes to downtown Columbia, just because obviously you got kind of this sideways that you can go to get to downtown Columbia. Anyways, let's dive into these houses. So we get kicked off in that half acre to 1 acre category. Homes selling from 806 square feet up to 2,253 square feet. Selling from $105,000 up to $420,000. But the average price came in at $172,000, and that brought it to an average price per square foot of $134. The 1 to 5 acre category. Homes selling from 960 square feet up to 2,484 square feet. Homes selling from $85,000 up to $339,000. The average was $223,000, and it brought the average price per square foot to $133. The 5-acre and up category, which capped out at 23.87 acres. Homes selling from 1,410 square feet up to 3,667 square feet. Selling from $255,000 up to $545,000. The average came in at $411,000. And that brought it to an average price per square foot of $196. Now with that said, there was one outlier that I didn't want misrepresenting that average price and dragging it up, but it was a 3,202 square foot home on 80 acres, and it was a working horse farm, and that sold for $975,000. And for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Brandon. My team and I of local real estate agents have truly been helping people from all over the country relocate right here to the Midlands of South Carolina, Lexington, Columbia, and Lake Murray. So don't hesitate to reach out. That way you don't have to go at this alone. Next, we're diving into rural southeast part of Columbia. I just actually did a driving video about this area not too long ago. We're talking about Hopkins and Eastover. Again, if you watch that video, very rural area until you get closer back towards Columbia, where you see that says Capitol View, Garner's Ferry, quite a bit of shopping down that way, but not too much as you get further down. Either way, to give you an idea, you're about 20 minutes, give or take, back to downtown Columbia from that Hopkins area. Either way, let's dive into the houses in these areas. So we get kicked off in the half-acre to 1 acre. Homes selling from 864 square feet up to 2,371 square feet. Homes selling from 140,000 up to 399,000. The average came in at 228,000. It brought the average price per square foot to $152. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes selling from 855 square feet up to 8,125 square feet. Selling from 121,000 up to 410,000. The average price coming in at $303,000, and this brought the average price per square foot to $140. The 5 to capping out at 13 acres. Homes selling from 1,810 square feet up to 4,300 square feet. Homes selling from 240,000 up to 715,000. The average came in at $426,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $155. Next, we're diving into Elgin and Lugoff, and I've talked about in recent videos, have had more and more people buying out this direction just because your money goes a little bit further. Kershaw County taxes are a little bit cheaper than Richland County and even Lexington County. And to give you an idea though, Elgin is a very small town, not too much in their downtown. As you get towards Lugoff, you got to get a little bit more shopping, and not too far from Camden, as you can see. And downtown Camden has quite a bit. There is a Walmart out there and some other shopping as well. But the other benefit, of course, on this Elgin side is you're not too far from that shopping in Northeast Columbia that we'll talk about in just a little bit here. And of course, not too far from downtown Columbia. So again, starting to be a little bit more popular of an area, as again, it is still very rural though. But let's dive into these houses. In the half-acre to 1 acre homes. Homes selling from 780 square feet up to 2,623 square feet. Homes selling from 160,000 up to 390,000. The average came in at 256,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $165. The homes on 1 to 5 acres. Homes selling from 1,000 square feet up to 4,623 square feet. Selling from 175,000 up to 815,000. The average came in at $342,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $170. In the 5 acre and up category, capping out at 25 acres. Homes selling from 1,738 square feet up to 3,615 square feet. Homes selling from 288,000 up to 765,000. The average price came in at $479,000, and that brought average price per square foot to $199. And so next we are going to be diving into those areas that I know so many of you are talking about: Blythewood, Irmo, Lake Murray, Lexington, and so many more. But we're getting wrapped up with what I consider the outermost rural counties: Newberry County, Saluda County, Aiken County, and then parts of Camden as well. These are areas that are just on the outskirts of the areas that we do cover. But of course, we do cover parts of them, which is why we're going to hit it in this video. And I've had help people sell out these directions as well as buy. But let's dive into the houses in these areas. Getting kicked off in that half-acre to 1 acre category. Homes selling from 572 square feet up to 4,866 square feet. Homes selling from $58,000 up to $595,000. The average came in at $223,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $128. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes selling from 560 square feet up to 6,619 square feet. Sold from $90,000 up to $2,148,786. And that brought the average to $335,000, bringing an average price per square foot to $162. In the 5 and up category, maxing out at 55.1 acres, with one actually on 185 acres that we'll talk about. Anyways, from a 500 square foot bungalow up to a 6,534 square foot home. Sold from $110,000 up to $2.75 million. The average came in at $584,000, and that brought it to an average price per square foot of $242. And for reference, some of the high priced ones, as there were 5 over $1 million, so it wasn't just some outliers in there. A $1.85 million, 3,698 square foot, 28 acre equestrian property for you and your horses in Aiken. $2.175 million, a 6,534 square foot home that was built circa 1817 and is considered one of South Carolina's most historic estates and gardens out in Camden. All right, so as we dive into the area that I know so many are asking about, we're diving into first Northeast Columbia, including the area of Blythewood, which I just made a video about, talking about the growth that Blythewood has had over the last few years. But either way, obviously, benefit of Northeast Columbia is going to be that proximity to Columbia, whether you're trying to get to Fort Jackson, downtown Columbia, where a lot of hospital systems are, the Scout Plant in Blythewood, Sandhills Mall out in Northeast Columbia. Just a lot more urban of a setting, but you do still have these rural areas where you obviously can get some acreage and some land. But let's dive in. In the half acre to 1 acre category, homes selling from 752 square feet up to 2,138 square feet. Selling from $120,000 up to $355,000, but the average came in at $244,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $159. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes from 912 square feet up to 4,290 square feet. Homes selling from $176,000 up to $670,000, with the average price coming in at $369,000. And that brought an average price per square foot to $158. In the 5 acre and up category, and this one maxed out at 85 acres, saw homes from 1,670 square feet up to 6,336 square feet. Selling from $390,000 up to $1.2 million. But the average came in at $750,000, and that brought it to an average price per square foot of $227. All right, so as we start diving around Lake Murray, and again, we are going to hit Irmo, Lexington, and the Lake Murray area, but we're getting kicked off here in that Chapin, Ballantyne area that we talk about. Even parts of Irmo on that kind of further west side, as you can see. Chapin, very small town at this point. You know, you got some grocery stores out there, but most of it is just going to be local mom and pop shops. Your closest major shopping is going to be back in Irmo, which I tell people, depending on where you're living in Chapin, 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And of course in Irmo, which we'll talk about in just a bit, you got every chain store you can think of, including our one and only Costco. But again, Chapin, very small town still, but proximity to everything, especially Lake Murray. So let's dive into these homes. In the half acre to 1 acre category, homes selling from 936 square feet up to 5,420 square feet. Homes selling from 100,000 up to 1.4 million. And no, this wasn't an odd house out again. There were 2 that were over $1 million that were near or had lake access near them. And don't forget, with that said, later on we will dive into ones actually on the lake. Anyways, the average was $558,000, and it brought that average price per square foot to $189. And if we remove those 2 that were those high priced one, the average came in at $433,000. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes from 1,467 square feet up to 3,465 square feet. Selling from $200,000 up to $785,000. The average came in at $430,000. And that brought the average price per square foot to $191. In the 5-acre and up category, maxing out at 17 acres. Homes from 1,312 square feet up to 4,145 square feet. Selling from 455,000 up to 810,000. With the average price coming at 631,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $289. All right, so we are diving into the Lexington area, and after this, again, we're gonna hit Irmo and the Lake Murray, but as you can see around the Lexington area, this area truly does span a little bit far out. And so I'm gonna break this down two different ways. I'm gonna give you that pricing of this area that we're talking about. That does include some of Gilbert, even as you can see, kind of more of that South rural Lexington as well. But at the end, I'm also just going to touch base on that average price when we're talking about those Lexington 1 school district schools that y'all asking about, River Bluff, Lexington, White Knoll, and Gilbert, just to narrow it down, because you will see there is a slight price difference between the two. But again, Lexington, I know so many of y'all talk about, first time learn about this. Again, we're going to talk about later on a video that breaks this down more, but downtown Lexington, such a quaint downtown where you got the Ice House Amphitheater, you got local shops, restaurants, so much more. And then of course, you know, you're not too far from downtown Columbia, not too far from the shopping in Irmo, and then even right there in Lexington, down Highway 378, you got all of the shopping down in that direction there. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I will reference you to that video if you are learning about the area, but an area that so many of y'all ask about. But let's dive into these homes in the Lexington and surrounding areas. In the 1/2-acre to 1-acre homes. Homes selling from 948 square feet up to 4,645 square feet. Selling from 135,000 up to 950,000. The average came in at 369,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $167. Now, when we isolate the Lexington, River Bluff, White Knoll, and Gilbert high schools in the Lexington 1 school district, that average jumps up to $386,000, and it brought the average price per square foot of $175. In the 1 to 5-acre category, homes selling from 1,244 square feet up to 7,301 square feet. Selling from 155,000 up to 1.43 million. But the average sold at 440,000. And it brought that average price per square foot to $176. Again, isolating those schools in the Lexington 1 school district, it brought the average up to $464,000, bringing the average price per square foot up to $179. In the 5 and up category, maxing out at 20 acres. We saw homes from 1,200 square feet up to 5,104 square feet. Selling from $275,000 up to $1.3 million. The average coming in at $682,000, and that brought that average price per square foot to $225. And all these were actually zoned for the schools that we did talk about. All right, so before we dive into the Lake Murray, not literally, but figuratively, let's dive into Irmo, because I know so many ask about the Irmo area. And in this area specifically, we're gonna be hitting on the Lexington Richland 5 school district part of Irmo, right? Irmo High School, Dutch Fork, and all around there. One of the things I know somebody asked about, because I talk about how the Irmo area kind of spans a little bit further into some areas of Columbia, and as you can see as well, a little more rural areas, but we're going to hit on that. And again, for those first learning about the area, Irmo, you have so much, you have our local mall there, as I talked about before, our one and only Costco, so much shopping. I think that's one of the things I think people like about the area is the fact that older established neighborhoods down there, some of these homes with land, but really close proximity to a lot of that major shopping that you have in the area. And of course, as you can see, not too far of a drive from downtown Columbia. So just kind of a convenient location right there in Irmo. But again, let's dive into these houses and what you can get in Irmo. In the 1/2-acre to 1-acre category, homes selling from 1,102 square feet up to 4,709 square feet. Selling from 140,000 up to 788,000. The average came in at 419,000, and that brought the average price per square foot to $142. In the 1 to 5-acre category, homes selling from 1,382 square feet up to 3,607 square feet. Selling from 250,000 up to 720,000. The average price came in at 458,000. And that brought the average price per square foot to $198. In the 5+ category, there are actually only 2 homes that we're going to be talking about. 2,600 square feet on 6.25 acres for $615,000, and 2,839 square feet on 10 acres for $618,600. All right, so as we get kicked off on Lake Murray, we're gonna get kicked off on those more rural counties. We're talking about Saluda County and Newberry County. And I recently did a driving video where I drove around these areas. So you can see there's actually not a ton out in the Saluda and Newberry area. But again, not too far from, downtown Lexington, not too far from downtown Chapin, Irmo, and so many more. But let's talk about what you can get in the rural counties on Lake Murray. And then next we'll dive into around Lexington, Irmo, and Chapin on the lake. Kicked off in the half-acre to 1 acre category. Had 1,000 square feet home up to 2,562 square foot home. Sold from $425,000 up to $805,000. The average came in at $580,000. And that brought the average price per square foot to $130. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes selling from 2,115 square feet to 3,063 square feet. Homes selling from $719,000 up to $1.225 million, with that average coming in at $919,000, bringing it to an average price per square foot of $382. In the 5+ category, there's one home, a 4,702 square foot home on 5.85 acres, selling for $1.6 million. All right, let's dive into the Lexington, Irmo, and Chapin part of Lake Murray. This is gonna be that further east side, a lot of proximity to, again, downtown Lexington, that Irmo area, Chapin, Columbia, and so much more. Really big desire for a lot of people. And as you can see, a lot of this tends to span a little bit further on the west side, because obviously this east side, you have a lot of neighborhoods in there that are HOA, but of course you can find plenty of homes on land throughout the entire area, just more prominent the further you move west. Again, there do some that pop up randomly in these areas around here, but just more prominent, like I said, on that west side. But either way, let's dive into these homes in the Lexington, Irmo, Chapin area on Lake Murray. In the 1 to 5 acre category, homes selling from 1,344 square feet up to 7,000 square feet. Homes selling from $460,000 up to $2.8 million, with the average coming in at $1.287 million. And that brought to an average price per square foot of $396. In the 5+ category, you had one home, 7,667 square feet on 6.08 acres that sold for $2.8 million. Again, if you want to learn about all these areas in more detail, you'll want to check out this playlist here, where I actually dive deeper into all of these areas. I talk about the pros and the cons. I talk about nearby amenities and so much more. So again, to learn more about these areas, check out this playlist right here.